You have no idea how excited I am to talk about this. I love haunted houses, especially haunted places, especially the history behind them. Hi, I'm Jessa, and join me as we look at the top 10 historic locations in America that are haunted. Also in the last video, I gave you guys a little riddle. Did you get it? The riddle was, what do you call a 5-letter word typed in all capital letters that can be read the same upside down? The answer is swims, S-W-I-M-S. Your next riddle will be at the end of the video. Anyways, let's get started. Number 10, the Peyton Randolph House in Williamsburg, Virginia. I'm a little bit of a Hamilton nerd, so when I saw that the American Revolution General Marquis de Lafayette stayed at the Peyton Randolph House, my interest peaked. But what really got me was that Lafayette had reported in his own journal spooky phenomenons that he himself documented. In 1737, Peyton Randolph House is situated in colonial Williamsburg and had a long history in haunted happenings. The house served as headquarters for the French forces in 1781 under the command of the General Jean Baptiste until the French and American forces moved into field positions around Yorktown. At the time, Lafayette noted to feel hands touch his or even push them when no one else was around, even tried to push him down a flight of stairs. In 1824, Lafayette returned to Williamsburg to see where he had stayed during the Revolutionary War. Where he toured the US, he stayed once again at the Peyton Randolph House. He writes, I consider myself fortunate to lodge in the home of a great man, Peyton Randolph. Upon my arrival, as I entered through the foyer, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It nudged me as if intending to keep me from entering. I quickly turned but found that no one was there. The nights were not restful as the sounds of voices kept me awake for most of my stay. Today, the Peyton Randolph House carries more hauntings, like from the colonial Williamsburg security guard who got trapped in the basement of the house after entering through the shutter doors behind the house. He tried to make his exit as he heard a large and terrifying growl and felt something grab his legs as if firmly holding his feet down. He was stopped in his tracks when he was unable to move, and then suddenly the shutter doors slammed shut. His flashlight then also turned off. He quickly used his radio to call for help when his lieutenant finally came and pried open the cellar doors. They had to pry the cellar door open. He was released from whatever was holding him down, and then he quit the next day. 3 months later, he was able to get a much higher paying job. Good for him. Number 9, Biltmore Estate at Asheville, North Carolina. The incredible Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina was built in the 1800s by George Washington Vanderbilt II. Vanderbilt's wife, Edith, turned the Biltmore into a private museum of luxury and would host lavish parties and entertain guests over extended stays. When initially built, there was no signs of any paranormal activity until after the Vanderbilt's passing in 1914, especially when his heirs decided to open the home to the public. When Vanderbilt was alive, he had a bit of a habit retreating to his library every time there was a storm approaching. His ghosts may actually be continuing this habit, as workers and visitors mentioned seeing a shadowy figure in the library, especially when there's a storm coming. His wife Edith was also noticed as one of the ghosts lurking through the halls. I mean, after all, it is her house. She was also known journeying through the library to remind her husband it was time to greet the guest. Today, many people would also hear a woman's voice echoing the name George, George, as she would most likely be summoning him away from his studies. Workers and visitors have reported hearing the sounds of clinking glasses, laughing, and music emulating through the halls, even sometimes splashing from the now empty swimming pool. It just goes to show you that even after death, you can still have a ball. Number 8, Hotel Monte Vista, Flagstaff, Arizona. I'm pretty sure we've heard of haunted hotels before. There are so many listed in the US, and sometimes there are tragic cases that occur in these places of temporary rest stops. In Flagstaff, Arizona, they're quite aware of the Hotel Monte Vista, a place where paranormal guests have truly overstayed their welcome. Apparently there's a sighting of a long-term boarder who had the habit of hanging raw meat from the chandelier in room 210. Another sighting was a pair of 2 women who were thrown from the 3rd floor and now attempt to choke male guests in their sleep. There's also a report incidences of an infant whose cries have sent staff members running upstairs from the basement just to find nothing. Even famous actor John Wayne had stayed at this hotel and had paranormal encounters during his stay. If you visit Hotel Monte Vista and their website, they even have on their page with all their listed ghost stories from the tenants that lurk in their establishment. There you'll find the raw meat man all the way up to the story of the bank robber who was part of a 3-man troop robbery in the 1970s. He was shot by a bank guard, and the robber who was shot was reported to linger into the Hotel Monte Vista bar and take a drink before he finally succumbs to his injuries. Both patrons and guests have reported being greeted by an anonymous voice saying good morning when no one was there. Number 7, Lincoln Park Zoo, Chicago, Illinois. I never thought to say this, but yes, even a zoo can be haunted. From zoos to chimps, apparently there's a new exhibit you can visit while you're on your trip to Chicago, Illinois. There are ghosts at the Lincoln Park Zoo. From 1840 to 1850, at the heart of the zoo lay rests up to over 35,000 bodies. But don't be alarmed, apparently it's because it was served as a city cemetery at this time. Most of the cemetery patrons were moved due to its proximity due to the city's water supply, but that doesn't mean everyone was evacuated. Like most horror movies, you know well enough not to mess with burial graves, and the Lincoln Park Zoo was no exception to that rule. But still, as if walking above several thousand corpses isn't weird enough, a famous parapsychologist, Ursula Belsky, once called the area, in its current state, one of the most active sites she has ever investigated. People have been reporting multiple sightings at the zoo since it first opened 150 years ago, from activities both visual and auditory manifesting in heavy atmosphere and physical effects like lightheadedness and nausea. In total, there are about 10,000 unmarked graves underneath, and so with that being said, just be careful where you walk. Number 6. One if by land, two if by sea. New York City. Whenever you're on a date and your partner says they want to take you to One if by land, two by sea in New York City, you might be a little confused since that's the actual name. One if by land, two by sea is one of the most romantic restaurants in the world, with gold chandeliers, fireside tables, candlelights, upper crust cuisine, and about maybe 20 ghosts. Even in romantic settings, it doesn't stop the ghouls from gooing. And the spirits here, however, are more playful than the typical poltergeist havoc. As they are fully aware this is a place of fine dining, these paranormal activities include classic phenomenons like phantom pranks of flickering lights, tilting picture frames, and moving plates. Some of the most famous apparitions include a woman dressed in black who walks down the staircase. Others even claim Aaron Burr, wow, another Hamilton relation, who would have known, would have haunted the restaurant. Apparently the location of the restaurant used to be his carriage house back in the day. But despite these harmful pranks, there are still staff members that actually had to quit due to these experiences. The general manager, Roseanne Martino, says, yes, it's definitely haunted. I've had experiences, inexplicable experiences. I've been there for 8 years and I have seen a lot. She's even noted sometimes there would be plates flying and staff members being pushed. But if she's been there for 8 years, I think the restaurant itself is worth checking out. Number 5. The Roth House, Watseka, Illinois. Another bed and breakfast with a rich history that dates back to the 19th century. With its interior aesthetics and glorious quaint agriculture, leaves many to stay in an extra evening at this historic abode. However, many might know this location by another name, the Watseka Wonder. The Roth House, however, holds another secret. It was here at this beautiful location where the first recorded exorcism in American history unfolded. With tales of paranormal activity dating back thousands of years, the land of Watseka, Illinois is a home to America's first demonic possession. The tale of Mary Roth when she was a baby. She had her first cataleptic fit, and incidents became worse when she grew. When the girl grew old enough to speak, she told her parents Dorothy and Asa that she could speak to spirits in her trances. When she was a teenager, Mary was able to read any book while completely blindfolded. Her fits would be so intense that it took up to 5 grown men to hold her down. She would self-harm quite a bit and said it was to relieve the pressure building up in her head. She would speak languages that she had no way of knowing and would hear voices and recite them out loud. Her parents, very desperate about her condition, sent her to an insane asylum where she passed away at the age of 19. Turns out Mary never left her home, for another woman named Lurancy, who lived in the residence, told her mother one night that she wasn't feeling well. And just like Mary, Lurancy suddenly had the same symptoms of speaking in tongues, giving details of places she's never been to. She even told her parents that she's been communicating with spirits of the 2 older siblings who died many years prior. Apparently, Lurancy's body was inhabiting Mary's spirit, and even addressed herself as Mary. But there is a happy ending, somehow. Along the way, in Mary's voice through Lurancy, told her family that her spirit is healed and she will return soon. Months later, Lurancy went back to normal and spent her days in Watseka, Illinois. Those who visit the Roth House still notice spiritual activity as it continues to unravel to this very day, drawing curious folks if the house still hosts sinister spirits. Number 4. Moon River Brewing, Savannah, Georgia. The Moon River Brewing Company is probably one of the most haunted locations in all of Savannah, Georgia. Originally constructed in 1820, the building has served such purposes like a hospital, general store, and now restaurant. But each floor of the structure houses its own unique form of paranormal activity. From the entity known as Toby stays in the basement, lurking within the shadows, scratching and pushing passing tourists, least when expected. There lingers deceased former patients who stayed in the upper floor shuffling around and talking audibly enough for patrons, visitors, and staff to hear. Guests have even reported seeing a lady in white on the stairs, and spirits have been known to be messing with staff. From the basement to the upper floors, ghost activity in the building proves to be rampant as it has an enclave of history from the time it was a hospital, like the yellow fever outbreak to the horrible diseases that left memories within the building. Either way, despite the ghosts, the Moon River Brewing, being a restaurant today, serves up some fantastic brews and food. Number 3. Portland Shanghai Tunnels. In the late 1850s, Portland bars stretched the entire city block and waterfronts, was constant with international maritime trades. Beneath the old town Chinatown, which used to be Portland's original downtown, lingers under the city, the Shanghai Tunnels. Tangled with myth and truth, the local lore of what lies beneath the city still remains a mystery, as accessibility to the tunnels are closed from the public, as well as its inaccessibility due to collapsed tunnels. The legend says that the tunnels was a labyrinth of interconnected basements, makeshift rooms, and low-ceiling tunnels that ran from the waterfront to sneak in illegal goods, including victims. Some say at its early years, the tunnel would be used as a secret passageway to underground brothels, opium dens, gambling houses or used as temporary prisons for kidnapped men and women. Filled with terrifying legends of forced adult work, murder, ruined lives, and even an underground catacomb leaves many to believe that the area to be totally haunted. But still, no archaeological evidence exists to prove these claims. But it would still be interesting to see what's down there. Number 2. Myrtles Plantation, St. Francisville, Louisiana. America has a lot of rich history as it does devastating ones. Built in 1796 by General David Bradford, Myrtles Plantation has been noted as one of America's haunted sites. The house is rumored to be built on top of a native Indian burial ground, and it is home to at least 12 different ghosts. The story begins with a newlywed couple named Mr. and Mrs. Woodruff, who Mr. Woodruff was a prestigious judge and a proud owner of numerous slaves. But of course, Mr. Woodruff was also an abusive man, as he would beat his slaves at the slightest impulse, one of which was named Chloe. Chloe tried to protect herself from the pain by listening to Woodruff's conversations and trying to modify her behavior. But sadly, Chloe was caught by Mr. Woodruff and her ear was chopped off for eavesdropping, forcing to live with her mutilation. Chloe had to even request if she could wear a green turban to hide the terrifying mark. But the trauma and painful experience would stay with Chloe, and thus inspiring her to get her revenge. On the 9th birthday of one of Woodruff's daughter, Chloe accidentally poisons the birthday cake with an oleander leaf. She didn't have the intention to kill the family, but just to make them sick and nurse them back to health. Because to her, she thought healers are noted to be respected members of the community, and maybe I can get back into the good graces if I got them sick first and then nurse them back to health. Unfortunately, she ended up killing the plantation owner's 2 daughters and his wife. Chloe was then hung by her fellow slaves, and it is now said that Chloe wanders around the plantation wearing a turban to conceal her severed ear. Number 1. Lake Lanier, Georgia. Finally, we are here at number 1. And as we mentioned in number 2, America has both great and tragic history. And the most tragic and the most haunted, in my opinion, is that of Lake Lanier. Lake Lanier is one of the most controversial lakes in the United States. Built atop multiple sunken communities and cemeteries, the lake still attracts tragedies of all kinds. Its dark past and haunted reputation has been a topic for many years. In the midst of 1950s, there has been nearly over 700 deaths, many of which are unsolved or unexplained. And about 200 deaths have occurred in 1994, and at least 27 has still not been found. So how did this lake even happen? Well, in 1946, Congress approved the River and Harbors Act, which aimed to bolster waterways across the country. Among was a project that was approved for $45 million for the soon-to-be named Lake Lanier, after Sidney Lanier, a Confederate Army vet. The lake's creation was controversial mainly because nobody ever agreed to it in the first place. 56% of the budget was to design and construct, and 44% was to relocate families, business, and churches. But that never happened. Instead, it took 5 years for it to fill the lake, and although the US government claims it displaced 250 families, on one account it was more like 700 families. And these families were primarily black families. In the 1920s and 1930s, there was a force out of black people and a mass transferring of their lands to white people. And in the beginning of the 1950s, the now white community saw the land value growing as much as the Atlanta population was, and so the water followed. The problem with Lake Lanier today isn't just from the basis of its history, but the fact that the lake wasn't even designed to be used as a recreational lake. It's just there. And although there are concrete buildings, cars, parts of bridges, and other debris in the deeper parts of the lake, the water is now receding and accidents just keep happening, adding to the debris. Lake Lanier has seen more than 500 boating accidents, including mysterious boats exploding into flames. It is said to be the most dangerous underwater surface in the US, and when floods come through and the weather gets extreme, it makes the lake more chaotic and difficult to find missing bodies. The haunted part usually happens if you choose to swim in the lake, as people have reported feeling hands, arms, or a leg and it doesn't move. Or when it does, it feels like it's trying to pull you down under the water with them. Did you like any of the spooky locations listed? Let me know. Oh, alright, I forgot. Your next riddle. Are you ready? What can be touched but can't be seen? Be sure to put your answer in the comment below, and I'll reveal the answer in the next video, Top 10 Messed Up Things You Never Knew About Salem Witch Trials. That's all for today. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jessa. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see your beautiful faces in the next one. Bye bye!